Look, if you don't like our judicial system over here, then there's 100 other countries you could go to where they do things different. And you can try it over there. But over here, you have a right to a fair trial. You have a right to the presumption of innocence. You have a right to be tried by a jury of your peers. And what is happening in Delphi, in my own opinion, is absolutely ridiculous. There's no cause for this that I'm aware of. And if there is a reason why, let me know down in the comments below. But I believe it to be absolutely ridiculous, and I'm going to explain my point of view. Feel free to jump into the comment section at any time with yours as well. And if an open conversation is something you prefer, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the point, so let's talk about it.
Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Now, as I said in some other videos, that we were all under the assumption that after this jailhouse confession, Richard Allen did it, it was an open and shut case, and good for the investigators, good that the families will get justice, and it will be good that the overall community can move on. But ever since his former defense attorneys had filed that bombshell motion, it has been an absolute crap show. It has been a teetotal disaster. Now, they had that hearing right before Halloween where they were going to address a lot of issues. It was going to be the first time cameras were allowed in that courtroom. It was going to be the first time we could get eyes on the situation. And Judge Gold comes out and makes that statement that Richard Allen's attorneys had removed themselves from the hearing, and they had removed themselves from the case, and they were no longer going to be representing Richard Allen. Now listen, I'm not going to act like I have followed this case from the beginning and I know any of the ins and outs, but immediately after that particular motion was filed alleging that this was tied to Odinism, I became intrigued and wanted to see where this thing would go. My initial speculation, of course, was that this was mostly nonsense. There was no real ties between Odinist and this case, and that the Purdue professor agreed this had nothing to do with it. But then court filing after court filing, it would appear that there was validity to this motion. There were guards at the prison who wore Odin patches that have since removed them when all this became public. The Purdue professor that nobody knew who he was had came out and made a statement where he believes that this was something that it seemed like people were trying to emulate. One of the things we had kind of thought was if they did get removed, it would be tied to those leaked photos. But they had no direct hand in that. And from everything I can read, and from everything I have seen, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, not Mr. Baldwin or Mr. Rozzi has done anything during this hearing to warrant them being removed, other than filing some paperwork not under seal. That was a little brazen and a little bold. But even being brazen and bold, it doesn't automatically grant a judge the authority to remove somebody just because they feel like it. There is a process here. There is a process to remove an attorney from a case. And it usually involves a hearing, but we had no hearings. And then come to find out, Rozzi wanted to continue to represent Richard Allen. Richard Allen wanted him to continue to be his lawyer. And he had said he had no intentions of removing himself and that he had not filed any paperwork. But the judge comes down and says, nope, that's all wrong, tells the clerk of court to pull it out. And now here we are in a situation where the Supreme Court has to step in and intervene in a case in which a judge has already been removed before, and we now may get another removal of a judge again. I mean, what is going on over there? Now, in terms of judicial process, the presumption of innocence, and a fair trial, while there are people who believe the situation going on in Moscow is shady, is secretive, I'm telling you right now, everything going on in Delphi right now screams shady and secretive. Now, whether it's all going to be true or not is yet to be determined, but on the optics of it, based off the filings and based off the articles, it seems like all kinds of nonsense is going on, and it just doesn't make sense. What viable reason do they have to remove an attorney from a case, especially when the person being accused wants those attorneys there? He wants that representation. Now, I had come across an article last week where the judges said no, Richard Allen couldn't pick his defense team, that he was using public defenders. And then there was the statement by Rozzi where he said, okay, I will do it pro bono. I will do this for free. And under the current laws, correct me if I'm wrong, if an attorney is willing to do a case for free, do it pro bono, does that not then mean the client can afford the attorney and has the right to pick his attorney? From the optics of this whole thing, it just appears that the judge didn't care for how those two attorneys went about filing their motion. In fact, there were stories that with the new defense team, they were going to have a meeting about decorum, and I get it. There is a proper way to go about things where you are courteous because this is a profession where they want you to be professional. But even then, it should be that the bar to remove an attorney from a case and to remove him from having a client represent them, that should be the highest bar. That should be the one thing that is next to impossible to do unless there are very specific circumstances that prove this attorney is doing something wrong. Simply filing a motion and conducting yourself in a manner to which the judge isn't necessarily happy with does not constitute removal. And it is at the Supreme Court now, at least at the time that I recorded this video. And we have no idea what's going on with this. I mean, the whole thing is nuts right now. You have a guy who hasn't been charged, who has been housed in a prison. We have seen the pictures of him. He does look deteriorated. Now, whether that is intentional, which I don't necessarily believe, or not, he looks like his mental and physical health is declining. And he looks like, and from what we could read in the articles, both him and his family have been in communication with Mr. Rozzi and Mr. Baldwin for some time. It does appear that as public defenders, they were going well above and beyond. And we never got to hear the validity of that motion where they were blaming Odinism. They were blaming Odinist. I had done a full video about it, but I had made it private because I had used names, and honestly, after the fact, I didn't feel comfortable doing it because there was nothing necessarily tying those four individuals to the crime that we could see, and I just didn't want to be one of those who further blasted their names and possible information out there. But you got to let me know what you think about this. I mean, the whole situation has not only spiraled out of control, it has been spiraling out of control, and it is honestly one of the biggest crap shows in U.S. legal history as far as I'm concerned, at least in modern U.S. history, because none of this makes sense. What grounds does the judge have to remove somebody without a hearing? If there is one, let me know down in the comments below. Or is there some validity in that filing with that state Supreme Court where they want her removed because they believe she's biased? I mean, the whole purpose she was placed over this case was to ground it, was to bring everything together, and it was going to be a reset, and then they were going to have the trial. But nothing has gone right since that Frank's motion was filed. Nothing. It has been just a complete crap show. And I've been watching it. I haven't been making a whole lot of videos on it because honestly, it's so crazy I didn't even know where to begin. But I mean, really, when you start talking about the optics of secrecy and the optics of unfair judicial process, this has to come to the top of the list. And whether you believe Richard Allen is innocent or guilty, absolutely something that I stand by, is that everybody has the right to a fair trial. We do not get justice in this country by doing shoddy investigations, going after convictions instead of justice, and having unfair trials. I mean, our whole court system is bogged down enough. We don't need to add another case to the deal where there's another appeal, and it just isn't, at least on the surface, seeming right. But you let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. As I say, this is an open discussion channel. Regardless of the crime, regardless of the tragedy, I am for justice. I am for transparency. I am for fairness in our judicial system. That is the only way to closure. Yes, our system isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. There are protections in place. There are appeal processes to ensure fairness. And I do believe, as I believe with the other cases I have covered, he has the presumption of innocence. I don't understand why he's in a prison. I never quite understood that. I know it had something to do with his own personal safety, but I mean, if you can't keep somebody safe behind bars in a jail, how are you going to keep them safe behind bars in a prison? The whole thing seems ridiculous. I do hope we get some sort of resolution soon. I do hope the Supreme Court comes down with a just ruling and Richard Allen can get the representation he wants, because that is his right. And if he's not paying for it and the attorney is willing to do it pro bono, wouldn't that just make sense? Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. Other than that, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. Y'all stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.